Hi, good day everyone. Today, my group and I would like to discuss COVID-19 pandemic in the year 2025 for our Culture, Diversity and Behavior class. Okay, my group members are Priya Singh, Anjali Persad, Mindy Guevara, and Desrie McDonald. It is the year 2025, 5 years since the pandemic of COVID-19 virus. A vaccine has been developed and the virus is now under control, with most societies being able to successfully control the spread. As you can see, globally, as of the 12th of December 2020, there have been millions of confirmed cases of COVID-19, including almost 1.6 million deaths reported to the World Health Organization. Now, it is the year 2025, and there have been over 197 million cases, including more than 5 million deaths. As of December 2025, there have been recorded 1 million positive cases, including 200,000 deaths. And in Trinidad and Tobago, as of December 2025, there have only been 209 positive cases, including 5 deaths.
Descriptive aspect of culture post-COVID-19. A descriptive cultural framework underlines that culture is historically anchored, that tradition is an integral part of culture, and that we learn culture in a society. So now there's a skit. This skit represents a day in the lives of two friends, Diane and Anne, 5 years after the pandemic. It clearly depicts the conversation of both friends enjoying the time spent at home, where classes are still conducted online instead of face-to-face interactions in school. Also, instead of meeting up personally, they have embraced digital communication fully via the use of Zoom and WhatsApp. The conversation between Diane and her mom with reference to the new culture shows the fear even after the vaccination has been produced and individuals have been provided with it, she is still wearing a mask. Then there is the conversation between Anne and her dad about how lucky he is to have his job, as her friend's dad lost his job after the pandemic. At dinner time, Anne's mom is hysteric about the distance between her daughter and her, but this is a typical day in one's life after COVID-19. Usually they would sit close to each other, but because of this pandemic, the culture is such. Therefore, this scenario just signifies after the pandemic, individuals will live with fear, and the culture of the people of Trinidad and Tobago will change drastically. Descriptive aspect of the newer normal. Culture identifies and influences what people and how people communicate, to whom they communicate, as well as how. Public interaction has drastically decreased. Under the circumstances, public interaction has decreased drastically, whereas with the onset of the pandemic, it has changed the process completely. People embrace modern digital communication strategies. On the other hand, when people embrace these modern digital communication strategies, they may establish preferences for these new techniques and keep them in the longer term. Also, ensuring internal economic downturn. In terms of the economic downturn, due to the pandemic, the ensuing internal economic downturn resulting from the closing of non-essential industries and services put more pressure on the economy of the small state of Trinidad and Tobago. Families will now spend more time together because 5 years later, with the new culture, families can now be able to spend more time communicating and spending enough time. Greater stability and lack of greater stability and lack of versatility. Greater stability, it just signifies that over 78% believe that they were more productive and more efficient while operating from home. Even school and learning has been productive as a means of dividing and interacting, as this is more favored by students.
Okay, so we're doing with the norms of culture. Norms provide our society order. Human beings need norms to guide and direct their behaviors, to provide order, predictability in social relationships, and to make sense of understanding each other's actions. In the case of COVID, within the next 5 years, this has changed drastically. So we go from vaccines are being implemented and was in progress. Masks were mandatory in 2022. 2023, vaccine trials in process close to being launched. 24, launch of COVID-19 vaccine. And 25, vaccine is going to be mandatory. Masks were mandatory again in no schooling, no indoor dining, and masks were only to be worn if you did not get a vaccine, and resume from work from home. Things have changed with schools. No physical schooling, we go to online schooling, where things will end up in a situation in 2024 where we'll end up having to go to school via shift. And with business and job opportunities, they will continue to work from home. And possibly if you have the vaccine, you will be able to resume traveling. So, but as the years progress, things will change and will be more, maybe the borders will open by 2025. The values of culture. A culture value are ideas about what is good and bad. Values are deeply critical for transmitting and teaching culture's beliefs. Values in Trinidad has changed drastically since COVID. So we're looking at now, we had equality. And then 2025, next 5 years, we'll have an inequality. 2021, where they working hard to play hard, but in 5 years, they won't have even enough jobs to even play hard. In regards to safety, our death rates and crime will go up because of people not having jobs. People will resume to robbing people, killing people for their vehicles, for their monies, everything. Trinidadians, their behavior will change because we look at their behavior in a certain way, and when all of those changes in society, we have to act according to those changes. And we know Trinidadians don't like to change their behaviors. Equal opportunity in the workplace in reform to people not being treated fairly in their jobs. We no longer will have freedom. We don't have freedom to do what we no longer do. We have no freedom to party. We have no freedom to land anywhere. We have no freedom to travel as desire to visit the places that we will would and wish to vacation in, basically.
Heading to the structural part of culture, organizational cultures are affected by and affect organization politics, and all societies recognize political leadership roles of some sort, and these roles are allowed to make decisions concerning the society as a whole. Since the impact of COVID-19 virus, the government of Trinidad and Tobago has implemented new laws and regulations to fight and control the spread of the virus. Over the past 5 years, our nation as one culture has drastically changed, and a new conformity has changed into a new culture. Political and government structure. Over the past 5 years, there has been many changes with the law and public health regulation. There has been quarantine orders and fines, face masks, restricted gatherings. There was shutdown of businesses and non-essential and essential. Unemployment and relief packages were made to persons who were non-essential workers. Changes in operations of government offices and private institutions. Some of the changes in educational and organizational structure were online learning. There were no acceptance in school without a mandatory vaccine, rotational shifts, AM and PM, exams only at school, social distancing at school, limited interaction, limited extracurricular activities, robotic sanitization.
Now let's look at the psychological aspects of COVID-19. The COVID-19 outbreak has provoked social stigma and discriminatory behaviors against the people of certain ethnic backgrounds, as well as anyone perceived to have been in contact with the virus. Racism and discrimination. Racism is a form of prejudice that assumes that members of racial categories have distinctive characteristics and that these differences result in some racial groups being inferior to others. Racism generally includes negative emotional reactions to members of the group, approval of negative stereotypes, and racial discrimination against individuals. Whilst discrimination is the ability to perceive and respond to differences among stimuli, it is considered a more advanced form of learning than generalization, and the ability to perceive similarities. About 4 in 10 persons, Black and Asian, says that people have acted as if they were uncomfortable around them because of their race or ethnicity since the beginning of the outbreak. And similar shares say they worry that other people might be suspicious of them if they wear a mask when out in public. 2 surveys were done in Trinidad and Tobago. 400 persons were tested, and out of those 400 persons, 204 of those were tested positive. So our purpose of the survey was to test, out of all the positive patients, who felt discriminated and all of the tested patients who experienced racism. Of the races tested, of the 400 persons, over 135 persons said that they had felt discriminated by being called gross or looked upon with scorn or disgust. Here we can see that we tested based on 4 categories: African, Indian, Chinese, and other races being Venezuelans and Syrians in Trinidad and Tobago. Of the positive cases that we tested, 204 cases, they have claimed to have lost relationships as the fact that they felt as if they were, because they are a certain race, they were grossed to be around. They couldn't stand being next to them because they were worried that they would be in contact with COVID. Based on the criteria of these 4 races, we have seen specifically that with Africans, we have lost in Trinidad in 2025 2 deaths. In Chinese, we have seen 1 death, and in the Indian descent, we have seen 2 deaths. With regards to mental health and COVID-19, we are seeing that the pandemic is highly associated with levels of psychological distress that in many cases would meet the threshold for any clinical relevance. Mitigating the hazardous effects of COVID-19 on mental health is a public health priority. The pandemic is increasing demand for mental health services. Because of isolation, loss of income, and fear, they are triggering mental health conditions, exacerbating existing ones. Many people may be facing increased levels of alcohol or drug use, insomnia, and anxiety. Meanwhile, COVID-19 itself can lead to neurological and mental complications such as agitation and stroke. People with pre-existing mental, neurological, or substance abuse disorders are more vulnerable to COVID-19 infections, and they may stand a higher risk of severe outcomes and even death. Lastly, with the new cultural organization, COVID-19, since the implementations of the new laws and regulations, there has been a new obedience and compliance of culture. In comparison to 5 years ago, our culture and behavior has changed. Some of these practices are wearing face masks by law, temperature scanning, and sanitization upon entry to all institutions are mandatory. There have been educational reforms, limited carnival activities. The healthcare workers are to maintain 10 feet of social distance due to the fact that they are exposed. Vaccines are mandatory. The borders are to remain closed internationally but not regionally. And counseling for all positive patients and families are done via online. Here we can see that with healthcare professionals, because that they are more exposed to COVID-19 patients, when entering a home, they must be at least 10 meters of social distancing. Here we can see some students in one classroom without masks, mainly because they are vaccinated but yet still practicing social distancing. This is a new way of communication. You can greet someone by bowing your heads. You can meet them by touching your feet. And for those with sign language disabilities, you are to use masks that are visible. This is an example of the robotic sanitization that were implemented. And that's the end of our presentation. Here are a few videos. Thank you.
The following shows a classroom scenario post-COVID-19 in the year 2025. Can you believe that it has been 5 years since corona pandemic has started? So many people died and so many left jobless. I am pretty sure it took the entire world into a depression. I remember not seeing anyone for almost a year other than the ones I lived with, and then seeing my classmates via Zoom.
That is so true. Look at how things are now. There is a vaccine, and I am thankful our school provides us with vaccines annually. I hated wearing those masks, even though I knew I had to. Now, we don't need to wear any once we are vaccinated. Though, things have changed. My brother still hasn't been able to go to school physically.
I would say, thankfully, we are all in the same room now as we can practice social distancing. In doing this, the rates have slightly decreased. Even my little sister is still at home. She is supposed to graduate and get her job, but living in Trinidad, the employment rate hasn't changed. Hey Scott. How are you? What is going on? Have you completed your homework?
Hey Tanya, I am fine. Yes, I have completed the assignment. Jessica and I were just speaking of how thankful we are for the life we have in the vaccine that saved us. And how our siblings are not able to go to school, but still have classes online.
I don't even want to hear about that. I am thankful I never got it.
How can you say that? I lost my mother from that virus. And now my dad and sister are both unemployed due to the pandemic. You are so insensitive. Just because you did not get it, does not mean you still won't. Be thankful for life.
Good morning, class. Hope everyone is doing well and fine. Today, let us look at COVID-19 and its origin. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, Scott, please press play.
The new coronavirus, too small to see, spread quickly from person to person, town to town, and country to country, to all corners of the world. Any one of us can catch it, spread it, and get sick. When a person infected with coronavirus breathes, talks, coughs or sneezes, tiny droplets with millions of harmful viruses spread into the air and land on everything nearby. Without realizing, the viruses enter our body. We breathe them in. They land in our mouth, nose, and eyes. And we pick them up on our hands, then touch our eyes, nose, or mouth. In these ways, the viruses enter our body and infect us. Most people don't get very sick with coronavirus. We can have this virus and not know it, and easily pass it to others, who pass it to more people. In a few weeks, a whole neighborhood can get infected. Most people who get sick get better on their own, but some, especially the elderly, and people who already have illnesses, can get very sick and even die. Coronavirus spreads when people are close together. To protect ourselves and each other, we need to stay away from crowded and enclosed places and keep our distance. Wear a mask to protect others and ourselves. Keep our hands away from our face. Cover our cough or sneeze using our bent elbow. Wash our hands often and well with soap and water. And clean surfaces that are touched often with disinfectant to make them safe. All these actions can help stop the spread of coronavirus and keep ourselves, our family, and our communities safe. You can follow these actions and stay safe too.
Alright, class. After seeing this video, can anyone tell me what is different? Have we adopted a new culture of COVID-19 or has it remained the same?
I believe that we have adapted to a completely different culture of COVID compared to back then. For example, prior 2025, it was mandatory to wear masks. Now, we are only to wear masks once we are not vaccinated. As well as, physical classrooms can only be suited for 10 students at a time at a shift schedule, while in 2020 schools were completely shut down and moved to online.
Excellent job, Jessica. Do you have anything to say, Tanya?
I believe that with the virus outbreak, the culture of COVID has changed. We were under immense pressure as students compared to now. Students were entering new classes and schools and were not able to meet their classmates and teachers, as opposed to now. With the vaccine in hand, we have adapted to a newer normal. We can all sit in the same room without a mask, but still need to be isolated from anyone outside a group of 10.
Thank you, Lizzie, for your insight. As you may know, the positive cases in our country have decreased. But it still doesn't change the fact that it still exists. Those who work in the hospitals are still to maintain further social distancing, that is being 10 feet away as opposed to 6. There have been many psychological adjustments as well. As you said, students are experiencing pressure. Now it is of greater importance for the teachers, as we are having lesser classes, smaller teaching periods, no testing, no examinations. The economy here has supplied numerous alternatives from then to now. There have been greater and larger technology that have been invented. For example, LED sanitizers, UV light sanitizers, robotic temperature testing, robotic distribution of food, and so much more.
Miss, I do not understand how COVID has lasted this long, while we HVE developed such great technology. The vaccine can help the spread of the disease, but the virus still exists. There has been a 90% success rate of this vaccine, but what about the other 10? The virus is not just a flu. It is now tampering with the patient's psyches. They are now losing their vision and experiencing hallucinations both combined. How it is that the virus is actually modifying itself and becoming worse than it started? I still have not seen my mother, who has been working in China since the beginning of this. The borders remain closed to international waters.
I do understand your situation. However, let us look at this video and maybe it can explain a little more to you. This video shows the expected outcome from 2020 of what they thought was going to happen in 2025.
Unfortunately, this is probably not the last pandemic that we're going to face, and who knows what we're going to need for the next one.
The international system is surprisingly fragile.
Our health insurance coverage is really patchwork right now.
Law evolves in conjunction with social evolution.
Explore what the future holds with experts from the University of Chicago in COVID 2025.
Oh no, did you hear that bell? This is why schooling is so hard now. And as you can see, within only half an hour we did this class. So, okay class, your homework is to do a comparison sheet on the culture of COVID from 2020 to 2025. Sorry Damien, I would answer your question at the next class. Remember to stay safe, use the LED lights or the robot before touching any doors, and get home safely. Be safe. Bye.
Do you remember to stand in front of me for 5 seconds while I use my UV light to sanitize? To make a 360 turn with all of your belongings on you. Please turn on the count of 3. Stand in line and wait on turn. 1, 2, 3.
Remember, do not touch any doors.
Always remember to stay safe, sanitize. Get tested and vaccinated. Stop the spread of COVID-19. Maintain social distancing. Use the nearby robots or UV or LED light sensor stations. Take care of the ones you love and yourself, 6 feet apart. Thank you.